I want to see here, because this is Victoria Derbyshire, who is opposed to the bill. So I want to see what she's got to say.
An MP opposed to this legislation, Conservative MP for East Wiltshire and Shadow Minister Danny Kruger. Thank you very much for talking to us on Newsnight. Now, you have said that your objections to this bill are not based on your religious beliefs. So do explain what your objections are.
Thank you. Well, I have two objections in broad terms.
Right.
The first is to the bill itself, the text of the bill. I'm afraid to say, now that we've actually seen it all in black and white, I respect the effort that Kim and others have gone to draw a bill that is safe, but unfortunately all the safeguards don't work. There's nothing to stop people, sad to say, slipping through the cracks of this bill. There's a whole lot of categories of people, I'm afraid, who would fall in scope, and I can talk more about those. But
Okay, I really want to see if he goes into some specifics, because just saying that, you know, just throwing it out there, I mean, if he were to be correct, sure, but he's got to like mention what the bill says. Maybe we can look at the bill up.
The second objection is to the more general effect that the bill would have on the relationship between doctors and their patients, and indeed our whole relationship with the state. If we decide that it's acceptable for government officials, people licensed by the state, doctors, to conclude that some people are better off dead, our whole understanding of the responsibility of care that the state and the NHS has to us is changed.
But this bill is not about medical professionals concluding who would be better off dead. It's about the patient making the decision voluntarily, without pressure, without coercion. They have to be of sound mind, with 6 months or less to live, with a terminal illness that cannot be reversed by treatment.
So that's the words of the bill, but yes. How do you actually enforce and implement those principles? So the 6-month terminal illness is notoriously impossible to determine. No doctor can say definitely that somebody has 6 months to live, so you would be asked.
All right, so what I would say here is that, sure, you never know what will happen to a specific case. You may say 6 months to live and they die tomorrow. You may say 6 months to live and they die in 2 years, or in 5 or in 10. But usually we have statistics, right? We have, there's a man with, I don't know, who's 70 years old. He's got stage whatever liver cancer. And we know that people who are under those conditions live so and so much time. Even if they say, you got 6 months to live, they're not going to choose to end their lives. Right? Maybe once their condition deteriorates and they are no longer able to live a life that they are happy with, then they can take that choice. This is about the choice someone will have. If someone diagnoses you, right? They say, you got 6 months to live. You can live, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 of those 6 months. And then once the condition gets to the point where you just can't live anymore, right, then you actually make the choice. So the fear this guy has is that someone is just going to immediately jump on board and off themselves, even though they still got like 6 months to live. If you're at the point where at 6 months to die, supposedly, your life is already unlivable, then I think that person has the right to make the choice. Sure, maybe they wouldn't die in 6 months, maybe they would die in a year, but I think they still have the right to choose, right? Either their life is good and they continue living until it stops being good, or it is so bad that they can't take it and then they choose and do this. So I don't really see where the problem is. So I understand the fear this guy says, but again, it's not like someone's going to be forcing you. The one thing I do want to concede is that, if someone says you got 6 months to live, you should still get palliative care, right? If you choose to live, you should get palliative care. Otherwise, it is a little bit like coercing, right? If you say, you got 6 months and you could live well if you had palliative care, but you can't afford it, so fuck off, that doesn't really give you much of a choice. So I do think that in those situations, it kind of forces you to make a certain choice. And I concede that that is problematic and that should be worked on.
Asking a doctor to determine that it's acceptable to put an end to this person's life.
Well, doctors make that assessment all the time, don't they?
Well, they don't decide to kill people. They don't decide to authorise a death.
They won't be deciding to kill people. That is scaremongering. It's the individual patient that makes that decision.
Well, what is being required is that you're asking a doctor to give you lethal drugs. That is a decision that the doctor will have.
You're asking a doctor to help you
Yes.
shorten your death.
Well, you say shorten your death. What we're actually doing is shortening life. And I fully respect...
These are people that are dying anyway.
Well, yes, although, as I say, people who have a diagnosis of 6 months to live would be eligible for this procedure, and that is impossible to predict with any accuracy.
Again, I don't think that that's a good argument. Like, yeah, you can't know if they have 6 months to live, but there are two possibilities. Either the quality of life is good enough to tolerate. In that case, the person will not choose to do assisted dying, or it is very bad, like that person is really suffering, and they don't really care if they would have lived 1 or 2 years in excruciating pain. Sure, you may not know, and maybe that person was going to live longer, but that's not really a good thing in that case. So I don't think that this is an argument.
So in fact, anybody who decided that they wanted to end their lives could theoretically qualify for this, as happens in other jurisdictions. So somebody with an eating disorder could decide that they're going to stop eating. They could find a doctor.
Not true.
Absolutely true.
Not true.
Victoria.
Anorexia is a mental health condition.
That's not a terminal illness. I mean, you can die from it, but anorexia doesn't count.
Yes.
And that is not allowed in this bill.
However, a physical condition that is consequent on your mental health condition would be allowed in this bill. So
I mean, that could be the case, right? So anorexia, for example, can have some serious consequences for your body, right? And you can die from it. But honestly, it doesn't really make much of a difference. So if you have anorexia and you get to the point where you are about to die, even though I think, from what I understand, death from anorexia is usually like pretty sudden and fast when it happens. But if you are like about to die, it's like a chronic effect from anorexia. So if you get to that point, it's the same. It's still a terminal illness. It's not like you get diagnosed with anorexia when you're just starting out and you're going to be immediately sent to be killed off. It's like if you have depression, and this is maybe a bit of an extreme example, and you attempted suicide. You failed, but you caused some incredible damage to your body. And thus, you are now in a position where you would qualify for assisted dying because you are going to be in excruciating pain while you live. Then yes, you should be eligible for assisted dying. So yeah, my point is that I'm disagreeing with a lot of the points this guy's making.
If you are physically ill because of your mental health condition, you would qualify. So as happens everywhere else, if you decide that you're going to refuse treatment or refuse food...
I'm sorry to interrupt. I do think that is wrong.
Well...
Because this is about terminally ill people whose treatment cannot be... whose condition cannot be reversed by treatment.
Yes, and you now have people being diagnosed with what is called terminal anorexia. So people with eating disorders who doctors conclude are going to die are being put on palliative care pathways here in the UK at the moment.
I mean, in that case, yeah, they should qualify, but it's not about the mental illness. They're not qualifying for assisted death because of their anorexia, but because said anorexia has already caused so much damage to their body that they can no longer live, right? That's basically the case. It's not like you're going to get diagnosed with anorexia and have the choice to die. That's not it at all. Anorexia can be beaten.
So as happens in other countries which have laws like this, it is perfectly possible for people with eating disorders to qualify for an assisted death. That would happen under this law, even though it's not what they intend. And this is an important point, because I do respect the intention of the drafters of the bill.
I disagree with them.
The problem is
very strongly.
You can't write in black and white a law that is safe, that won't be progressively loosened and that won't be abused. And as I say, the real danger of it...
There's no reason to think why it would be...
I always remember, this whole slippery slope is a fallacy. Oh, you know, it's going to get modified further. Then you will oppose that. Right? If in I don't know, 5 years, the MPs come up with a law that says, well, from now on, anyone can be legally killed and their opinion doesn't matter, only the doctor can decide, right? Basically giving the doctor the right to kill anyone. Then that's of course going to be rejected, and if not, then you got a big fucking problem with your government, and you should go out to the streets and riot. Right? But something like that could happen at any moment. If you're saying, like, if your MPs are at the point where they would draft and pass such a law or such a bill, then they would do it anyways, regardless of whether or not you approve this other thing, right? So that's not a reasonable logical argument to make at all.